Good afternoon. Welcome to our Thursday Deep Dive webinar. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. Today we're excited to have with us Nick Freeman and AJ DeLeon from Innovare. Innovare has created a data and strategy tool that many districts and charter schools have adopted in the past few years. We know from charter schools in New York that have adopted their tool that has been invaluable in terms of linking and displaying data to streamline internal and external discussions about how schools are doing. The Innovare team has created a back-to-school playbook, which compiles a set of resources we thought would be helpful to charters in New York. As we know, you all continue to grapple with the changing complexities of resuming instruction this fall. Nick will walk us through the playbook, and then there will also be opportunities for questions. Nick is a former data strategist in Chicago Public Schools, Education Pioneer alumnus, and a 2019 Surge Institute alumnus. Nick is Innovare's president and Social Innovation and Strategic Partnerships Leader. He's a self-proclaimed data geek, a great relationship builder, and a proud Chicago native. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Nick. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Awesome, Yamika. Appreciate you, the introduction, and the time to be here with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll jump into our presentation. Go ahead. Okay, awesome. So today what we'll be talking about is our Innovare Back to School Playbook. Before we jump in, just wanted to do just a quick little introduction on ourselves. As Yomika just shared, a little bit about my background, add in that I'm a private sector transplant, came over from the financial world where, since 2017, AJ and I, since we transitioned out of Chicago Public Schools, have really been working to solve major pain points in three specific areas. Centralizing data systems, as we know, there's an overwhelming amount of data in this education space. Secondly, really ensuring that we have quality strategies and, have that human-centered design behind the way we really support our communities and schools. And then thirdly, really looking at that project management. How do we ensure that our work is getting done and we're having the intended impact? So again, I'm super excited to be here with you all today. I'm going to kick it over to AJ just to do his quick introduction, and then we'll move through our presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time. I'm AJ. I'm the CEO of Innovare, and very happy to be here with all of you. I was a former high school teacher. I definitely want to say hi to all of our teachers and educators out there. I also worked for the Gear Up and Avid initiatives and went on to become the data strategist for the current CEO of Chicago Public Schools. And after I left Chicago Public Schools, I worked at the Gates Foundation in the K-12 and Chief Strategy Office for the U.S. Poverty and Mobility Initiative. So my experience has really been around empowering leaders. And that's what we do at Innovare through our data and strategy and the work that Nick and Tamika were mentioning earlier. It's great to be here. At Innovare, we have two main products. The first is our app, Inno. And Inno, as Yamika mentioned, combines the data, strategy, and project management. So it's really an all-in-one tool that allows you to organize the usually fragmented data systems or lack thereof into one dashboard. And then it also guides the leadership and the team through the process of strategic planning and executing those plans to evaluate results. So instead of having multiple screens or multiple dashboards to look at, now you can have it all in one place. And recently, we began our Innoverse initiative. And Innoverse is basically our social network for our clients. So we are bringing them together from across the country to share best practices and to be able to learn from one another and empower one another. Now that they're all getting good at their own sites, they're able to now share their strategy with each other through the Innoverse. And so we're excited to bring our first initiative of the Innoverse to you, which is this back to school playbook that Nick will now tell you about.
Awesome, thank you, AJ. So as you all can see, we're in this Zoom format, so feel free to jump into the chat functionality, communicate any specific questions that may come up. We are monitoring that chat, so as I'm going through this presentation, if anything comes along, please be sure just to funnel it through the chat and we'll be sure to get the answer to you. And really, today's agenda, we've already jumped into kind of our welcome and introduction. We're gonna dive right into the back to school playbook and then really open up to any questions so we can really provide any responses to the detail that's behind the playbook, the utilization that we've seen thus far, and how we see our Innoverse really helping us drive this work. So jumping right into the playbook. As I'm sure a lot of you all have been experiencing over the past few months, there's a lot of unknown, I think, and I think that's the easy way to put it. And really what we've recognized, working with our, 70 plus education leader partners across the country, is everybody is really in this I don't know stage, right? So really ensuring that we have the ability to bring together and collate information in a very usable format is kind of what we set out to do here. So really what it all started off with was, as we were meeting with with our individual leaders, getting a lot of questions of, what is such and such doing? How are these other schools handling this? What are they doing for their communication strategy? How are they monitoring mental health of their administrators? All of those pieces kept coming up. So for us, it was a lot of word of mouth and connecting our partners to other strategic partners or other leaders that, had created solutions. Again, for us at Innovare, really wanting to bring together all of this work in the social innovation where we're partnering together, right? The public, the private, and the nonprofit spaces are really engaging in strategies and aligned agendas. So what we actually did after we saw some of the research from these organizations that you see down below, I'm sure there's a lot of familiar names out there. I'm sure you all have seen a lot of these research studies around, how do we effectively come to school? What we found is it started to become overwhelming. It felt like every week there was another back to school playbook coming out. It felt like, a lot of these resources and tools were, super useful, but, as far as the timing, our leaders didn't have the time to really dive in, understand, and digest everything that was within them. So what we decided to do, we ran a webinar series where we brought together, our 60 plus leaders across the country to really provide us insights into what they saw, what they were doing, what that work looked like. And as AJ mentioned as well, our support is really centered around that continuous improvement and strategy development. So what we did is actually co-design solutions together, really thought about what those strategies and the work would look like for our partners within their communities. So what we came to find is that from feedback and from our research, we really started to see an alignment in 3 major buckets that you see on this page here. We had our leadership, governance, and resources, our equity, systems, and communication, and then our instruction, wellness, and mental health. So all of the organizations that you see down below, and all of them, we'll be sure to share this presentation, and this is all linked back to the actual resources. Again, we're really trying to provide an easy access point for all of this research in a super usable format for our partners as we really drive forward in our strategies. So getting to the actual playbook, there's 2 versions of the playbook that are available. One is an online version that allows you to get into, applicable, easy to use format. And the other is a downloadable PDF that has links back to all of the resources as well. So you can kind of continue along your journey as you really strategize around how do we have an effective return to school. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our online version and take you through what it looks like to access the back to school playbook. So here on our website, you'll see at the top in green here, the B2S playbook. So as I click on that B2S playbook link, you'll then see this landing page here. Across, you'll see kind of an introduction to that playbook and the goal that we're trying to achieve in this resource, and then also a link to any additional information that you may want around some of our other resources. Feel free to communicate with our info@innovare.sip email address. Over here on the right-hand side is where you're going to be able to access our playbook. So when I click on this View Playbook button, what you will see is we'll move into the actual playbook. So we'll go ahead, letting this load in. And here, we're now into the actual playbook. There is an access point where it will ask you for information, maybe your name, your email. Again, it's a free resource to sign up for, but we just want to make sure that we can keep you all abreast on future information, or again, some of the Innoverse events that we have in the future that we'll be able to share with you all. So on the page, on the back to school landing page, you'll see the actual downloadable PDF. So this is that one version, just a quick click into that actual document. You're now into the actual back to school playbook, as you can see across each of those 3 areas. And really what this is going to provide is that clear and cut, specific checklists as we're going back into school, and really broken out into 3 specific areas, right? So what do we do before we start the school year? What do we do as we return to the school? And what do we sustain throughout the school year? And as I go through the actual resource, you can begin to see, establishing a model of resilient leadership for your stakeholders. And then you have actually the ability to click into those additional resources, that will provide you with access to the actual toolkits and potentially other resources as it pertains to rubrics or actual assessment tools or communications with your family and community engagement. So for here, for example, that playbook strategy really comes from the roadmap that Catalyst Ed put out around their resilient leadership framework. So again, a lot more tools that you can access, again, in a very usable format. Our goal was really to centralize all of this information in a usable way for you all to really access and have access to. The second piece, so let me go back to our actual online version of the playbook. So down at the bottom, there's a similar version of the playbook that's available for you in an online usable format. So here you have the ability to click into those individual resources. Again, you'll be able to see, let's look into, managing a continuous improvement cycle, broken out into your 3 areas, right? So what do we do before we start the school year? What should we be doing as we return to school? And then what should we be sustaining throughout the school year as it pertains to, our long-term impact metrics. So again, usable format where you're able to come into any of the different areas, right? So you have your leadership, governance, and resources, equity, systems, and communication, instruction, wellness, and mental health. So again, as you click into any of those other areas, you may find that there isn't, multiple buckets where it falls within, right? So what do we do as we return to school for, our facilities preparation? This gives that, that clear checklist of what we need to be accounting for and how do we, ensure that our facilities are in the appropriate situations, whether, it's our remote facilities or actually our in-person. As we know, we're coming in various models, whether hybrid or remote or whatever it may be, really ensuring that we have those structures in place. So here, you have all of the access to those resources that exist as it pertains to the overall playbook. I'm going to come back to the overall landing page of the playbook. I want to show you all just a couple of more resources that are embedded in the tool. Again, wanting to give credit to all of the organizations that have been doing a great job of bringing this information. You can see the specific contributors that we have to the playbook and all of their resources that exist. As you scroll through all of this, you have the ability to link right into them as well, as I did. So if I open up into the CASA one, this will take you directly into, a specific roadmap that we utilize. Again, you'll have more detail into some of the specific strategies that exist within these resources as well. So as we're going through the process and as we're really supporting into our partners and supporting the work around effectively, returning to school, what we're also doing is we've launched our Innoverse. So as AJ was mentioning, this is really where we're bringing together our, network of change makers from our education leaders to our strategic partners, to the folks that are really, supporting as we return to school. So we've been running weekly and what will become bi-weekly sessions on an ongoing basis. Some of our past sessions have centered around, implementing anti-racist practices and ensuring that we're in socially just environments, thinking about how do we ensure that, SEL is rooted in true relationships of love. Those are different sessions that you'll be able to actually see. I'll show you in a second of what we've done thus far. But for instance, again, these will be our upcoming sessions that you'll see, so really thinking around how do we activate social innovation in our schools and communities. This will be a session we have tomorrow I'm sorry, next week. And then next Thursday as well, thinking about like, how do we build student ownership through design thinking, ensuring that we have, equity of voice at the table. So again, you can see some of the sessions that are upcoming. You can see information on some of those experts who will be providing our sessions as we move forward. And then at the bottom of our playbook page, you'll see actually historical sessions as well. So as I mentioned, how to lead for those anti-racist practices, some information on the actual back to school playbook, and then our webinar series from yesterday will be uploaded ASAP, so you all can see that as an additional resource as well. So as mentioned in the initial, our goal at Innovare is really to, alleviate pain points of our education leaders to ensure that, they are equipped with not only the technology, but the resources and best practices that will really help them achieve their outcome goals. And now even more so than ever, really coming together in a collective impact model, right? Like, how do we ensure that we have that shared agenda, right? How do we have that same common measurement system? How do we ensure that we have collective activities that we're moving forward with? How do we ensure that, we're communicating? And how do we ensure that we have a strong backbone behind us, right? And that's really where we see ourselves as Innovare. Truly that sense of truth to help you centralize your data to help you really have quality strategies, as you can see here in these back to school playbook, and then really to be able to measure that impact. So again, I'd love to start to answer any specific questions as far as goes to the actual development of the playbook, any of the specific resources that may exist, or any information that we can consistently provide to kind of come back and provide you a little bit more insight into the actual playbook. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm looking over to the chat. Would love for anybody for any specific questions that may come up around the playbook. I'd love to hear.
Nick, while questions are popping up, do you want to recap a little bit and maybe go to the other parts of the website where it talks a little bit about what Innovare does in general?
Come out of this presentation.
Okay, great.
I'll give people time to.
Great. We're going to interrupt for a second just to let folks know that we're going to move everybody into the webinar so everyone can ask questions and we can hear everyone can speak. So just give us a second while we do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. We see you all coming in.
Yep. And as folks are coming in as well, I'll just kind of give another just lens into our work and how this really, the back to school playbook fits into it in the overall. It all starts around our data, right? Really making sure that we have a centralized system that we can clearly, articulate where we are as our performance against our goals. Really having clear insights into a triangulated system, as I'm sure you all experience, the multiple systems, whether it's our student information systems, our, attendance systems, our financial systems, our progress monitoring, our interim assessment tools. How do we really bring all of that information into one centralized place, triangulated in a manner that really creates, the data literacy at varying levels, right? So the conversations you're having with your board, conversation you're having with your instructional leadership team, conversations that teachers are having with their peers, and then most importantly, the conversations we're having with our students and their families, right? How do we ensure that everybody is in alignment and has a clear sense of the truth of, what are our true impact metrics and where are we driving our work? Once we've identified those goal areas and have those KPIs aligned, it really is diving into the improvement science of it, right? So now how do we develop that strategy? How do we walk your teams through the improvement theory or the improvement process, right? So we develop theories of actions and driver diagrams. We go through that root cause analysis, really facilitating that cycle of, that PDSA cycle to ensure that, we're going through effective cycles of learning. And that really comes into our project management side. Right, so that's really where we can assess and see the implementation of the work happening. We can make sure that those actions that we were putting into place are really having that intended impact. And again, this is where the strategy and the back to school playbook will be living in our system.
And so just like we do with data, we did the same with the back to school playbook. We basically collated all these various resources into one resource to facilitate that. Initially, we had done that just for the partners that work with us already that have the Inno app, but we decided to make it an open source resource to open it up to the public, which is why we're presenting it here to you all so that you all can take advantage as well. And of course, if any of you are interested in later talking to us about how you can implement Inno, the application for data strategy and project management, that's also why we're here. So we're excited to take your questions now. I see some of you are asking if the Q&A is open. You have now been added to the panelists and you're able to just unmute yourself and ask questions about Innovare, about our work, or about the back to school playbook in general.
Hi, I just want to make sure that everyone on the call, that you can control your own mute. So we just want to make sure we're not having any technical difficulties. If I can just ask, I apologize, Suki, I'm gonna pick on you. If you can unmute yourself, just to make sure that we are all set here.
Sorry, who are you talking to?
Hey, that's fine, as long as someone did. Thank you.
Okay.
If that's Steve. Okay, great, perfect. I
So,
want to make sure that everyone knows.
I'll ask a question. So,
Great.
so we've all submitted our reopening plans, right?
Mhm.
Is this tool supposed to incorporate our reopening plan, or could it, or is it set side by side to our plan?
Great, great question. And I think the simplest answer, it would be a complement, right? We know that schools are at varying spaces of the planning process and having had submitted. But one of the portions, let me just kind of make sure I call it out specifically. There are things, since you may have had a plan already created, you have kind of your strategies and actions that you're thinking of. The way the playbook is broken out is into 3 portions. One being, and let me just open this up here. One being, what to do before your school year, thinking about like, what do we do as we return versus what we can sustain. So I think a lot of that sustainability piece, but it could be additional pieces that you could add on. Also, there are some strategies here that kind of discuss around, community engagement as well, right? So thinking about some new strategies that potentially could be implemented as an addition to the plan. So I would say it's definitely is not a replacement. It is a complementary factor to help support, the implementation of that plan.
And just to add on to what Nick is saying, I think that the complexity of creating guidance for an entire state means that New York's guidance for reopening is a minimum bar. And I also think it should be treated, and I'm going to bungle this quote, and I couldn't even tell you who it's from, that like no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. And so I think I really give kudos to Innovare here for compiling a lot of resources that I think could be a great touchback 2-3 weeks in to whatever your plan was, to say, wow, like that didn't go necessarily the way that we thought. And when we have to pivot and iterate, now what? So that's one of the reasons why we thought that this would be a good sustaining resource for folks, even knowing that you've already created plans that respond to the sort of health-based guidance of the state.
Yeah, indeed. I think and to add to that, this research is really designed to help think about those pieces that maybe are blind spots as you're doing planning. A lot of what, as you know, there is really not necessarily, there's no precedent for what's happening right now. So when it comes to a lot of various operations areas, or even the more qualitative aspects, such as the wellness of the communities that you serve, a lot of these experts, right? And we're not definitely taking the credit for the ideas in the plan, but really collating them all together, can really support that, those pieces that maybe are not required, right, or are not part of your compliance driven processes, as Anna mentioned. And this is more to really put that icing on the cake of the plan and really make it robust and put the meat on the bones, because the truth is everybody's looking for what is the sort of the plan, but it's going to vary from site to site. And as you know, from your own school and in your own charter, there's things that you have to keep in mind. So I think this resource is really for you as a tool, as a checklist of maybe what you need to keep in mind based on the research that has been published so far. And again, it's been collated in a very simple format, so you can just check the boxes. For you, this is not, you're not going to show this to anyone. This is your self-assessment of how, you are planning for the pre, the post, and the sustainability of schooling going forward.
And I see a question in the chat from Valerie asking if the dashboard integrates with school's own data and student information system. Yes, that's exactly what it is. All of the data that we produce is specifically coming from the schools and organizations that we partner with. So if it's a student information system like Power School, Tyler, Aspen, whatever it might be, we integrate with your individual systems, and then create a personalized dashboard. So that's a part of that human-centered design process that we have and that we implement to ensure that the tools that we're creating for you are designed for you, and to ensure that you have access to the data that you need to make your decisions. So yes, it's all personalized to your needs.
Is there anything else you're wondering about that you have a question about? Let us know.
Hi, yeah, this is Valerie.
Yes.
That sounds really good. The resources, that you've put together. I know all of us charter school leaders have been following all these resources. So to see them all put together in one place, it looks very helpful and comprehensive, especially as a checklist. As far as the dashboard solution, I see this, I know like for monitoring purposes, right? Every charter still has their same charter goals, but in the COVID environment, that's going to look different, like especially pieces like attendance. We may want to monitor virtual participation in meetings, in-person touch points. So there's just a new layer to it. So as far as customizing the dashboard, like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of how to operationalize. We say that we are going to follow up on our students' social emotional health by doing XYZ steps, right?
Yep.
But then how do we quantify that and monitor that on, especially with the hybrid programs, monitor that on a, monthly, weekly basis so that we can, see whether our plan is helping, and then make course corrections. So I don't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah, no, I feel like you've been in the past, all of my meetings this week with our partners, because that's a very common question that's coming up as well is, historically we've had these, more high stakes assessment that truly are driven by our accountability structures. And like, we don't have those right now, right? Like a lot of our organizations and partners don't have that, typical accountability metric available. So what we've really been doing, and so for instance, when I talk about like the personalization of the actual dashboards, we have the ability to tap into any system that you have. As long as there's an ability for us to export a CSV or an Excel file, or have a direct API connection, what we do, we extract it, put it into a data space, and then really triangulate those data sources. So here, what we're actually looking at, here's just an example of one of those dashboards, again, personalized for the individual partner. This is a high school here in Chicago that wanted to really build their structures around the research coming out of University of Chicago and the continuing success trends, which really stem from Freshmen on Track. So again, as we talk about that data literacy and really personalization, what we did is said, okay, like what are we setting out to do, right? And what are the varying levels that we have to have transparency around our data? Conversation really started off as, okay, like what are we sharing out to the stakeholder group? What are those high levels? So bringing together 3 systems, their Power School, their Dean's List, and their academic approach. What we did is created this system that, was able to produce, GPAs and their continuing success categories. It allowed for us to, go in and distribute, disaggregate information by priority groups of race, gender, IEP status, EL status, all, those priority groups, and then able to see kind of that current status, right? So are our students on track, right? Are there some failures? Who are those students? And then really being able to unpack that information in a usable format, as you mentioned, right? Are we meeting our goals? And, if we're not meeting our goals, where are we not meeting our goals, right? So really starting to dive into, which grade level is it? Is there a specific content area, right? And getting into a little bit more detail where we can see kind of across the board what those formats look like. Taking one more level down, right? Really diving into that student information level, really being able to see who those students are that are off track, and especially the ones who are, participating all of the time, right? Maybe signing on to their Google Hangouts or submitting an assignment, but maybe not hitting those mastery checks on our, interim assessments, right? So really, how do we then individualize and create those student profiles as is defined in the era of COVID, right? And as I mentioned, this is literally the conversations we've been having. And I mean, the most recent one was with one of our charter schools in Kansas City, where they've identified 3 measures of success in a COVID environment, and it comes around participation, it comes around engagement, and then a student's kind of will to do the work as well. Right. So really making sure that we're, again, creating those personalized ways to track and monitor, tapping into gradebook systems, tapping into interim assessments like Compass Learning, Achieve 3000, iExcel, Moby Math. The list goes on all of the variations. But again, our goal is, to really personalize all of our dashboards. So you will very rarely find 2 of our partners that have the exact same dashboards. It really is to address the specific need to the individual or individual school and the specific needs that they have. So does that answer your question, Valerie?
Yeah, and can you pull data from Google Classroom? I know.
Oh yeah,
that's
that was literally what we were just talking about.
Like minutes that a student logs into synchronous class.
So we're actually pulling all the way to web access portals as well to track like on-track sites versus off-track sites as part of like an engagement, how much time they're spending, what time of the day are they spending it on, what websites are they particularly spending it on, how many submissions have they done through Google Classroom, what was their score of those submissions, because it's not just about checking the box, I submitted it, right? What's the quality behind it as well? So that's another piece. But yes, all of those conversations are really front and center. And how do we create systems that will tell us, kind of going back to our playbook, right? If the systems we put in place, right? Because when we talk about equity systems and communication, a lot of our schools have developed surveys for their students, right? To ensure that the social emotional needs are being met and that they're being communicated to the parents, right? So now building in a strategy that can really be facilitated through, Google Forms, sent out through Google Classroom, pulled back in through Google Classroom, and then visualized in a dashboard to allow them to see that those communication strategies, that are articulated here in the playbook are having the intended impact that they wanted.
Yeah, and to add to that, Valerie, one thing that I think is different about us, if I can mute. Of course, it's a telemarketer. But what I was going to say is that there is what's, I think, an added value of working with Innovare is the fact that we are not just data visualizers. Like, we understand what the data actually means and how it's useful and how it can be useful for planning and for execution and for evaluation. So that entire continuous improvement cycle of planning, doing, studying, and acting, we're experts at that. And sometimes in order to do that planning part, you really don't have, and like you said, Valerie, like you're looking at different systems or, even like Google spreadsheets or other things. And so one thing that our team does is really get to know the personalized needs of that specific site. Like, what are those, maybe even helping you understand like what to measure, what metrics are the most important or that align the most to those accountability metrics that maybe you will be held accountable for. So I think that it's, this work is sort of the outcome, right, of a lot of conversations that happen around understanding needs and really being able to design together that system of continuous improvement. And in the era of COVID right now, there is all of our partners basically are going through that stage of really trying to align with what their district says or their charter authorizer says that they need to be measuring in the long term, but how do they operationalize that in the shorter term, week to week, month to month? I know here in Chicago, they were thinking they were going to go, full on, back to school, and now they've kind of walked that back and things like that. So there's a lot of pieces that keep changing, as week over week. And I'm sure in New York and in particular, cities versus others, there's different changes. So I think what we can bring to the table is not just the understanding of what your job is and what you're being held accountable for, but also helping the team that you have, whether it's your board, your ILT, or other people, your instructional leadership team, or even engaging with the community, understanding what are those measures of success that need to be looked at in the short term to just know that we're on the right path towards reentry. I think this is a really important note about Innovare. When we founded the company, it was really not just to be another data company or compete with the Illuminateds or Schoolzillas or people like that in the world. Is really to bring all in one, data that is human-centered and personalized and strategic, actionable, then the planning piece that complements, whether you call it strategic plan, campus improvement plan, charter, et cetera, that really guides that process. And then that piece around execution, because a lot of people have the data, but then the execution is lacking. So I think we really wanted to put it all together in a simple way. And this playbook is actually very emblematic of our work, where we bring pieces together that are best practices into one easy way to do it and to operationalize that going forward. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Any other questions? Or we'll move to close. Feel free to put them in the chat if you don't want to share them out loud.
Well, AJ and Nick, I'll just say thank you all so much for joining us and for having joined us in the past. You've been a real resource to schools, and we've been thrilled with your partnership and your interest in partnering with schools across the state. And I think that for schools that have implemented the dashboard, the feedback that we've heard, at least from both school leaders and boards, has been incredibly positive. So really appreciate the fact that you all went out of your way to do the compilation of all of the resources that are out there. I'm not going to lie, we flirted with it and it seemed daunting. And so I think it is an incredible asset. And really thank you very much for your time. I will only say briefly to schools in the context of a question that Nick answered around assessment data. Be on the lookout. We are in the process of working in follow-up to the Credo webinar with Mackie Raymond, with Credo, NWEA, and potentially some other assessment organizations to offer schools across New York the opportunity for aligned baseline and end-of-year assessments. In the context of my personal crystal ball, I know nothing, I'm not speaking officially, but in my personal crystal ball, I see no state assessments in 2021. And so it seems like really useful think work to think about how you are tracking, how you are thinking about student success along the lines of what Nick mentioned, the conversations that they've been having with other schools, how you are tracking it. And we would love to be a resource, and so hope to be offering that up in the next coming week. So stay tuned, be on the lookout. And I know I speak for Nick and AJ when I say if there are ways that they can be helpful, feel free to reach out to them. And as always, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll see you next Tuesday for our weekly Tuesday webinar with authorizers, as well as next Thursday for our Thursday deep dive webinar, all of which are listed on our website for your future reference and enjoyment. So Nick and AJ, thank you again. Very, very much. Really appreciate your time and your energy for this project. I think it's going to be a really positive ongoing resource for schools as things continue to evolve.
Yeah, you're welcome. We are really appreciative of you all, and thank you all for being here. We'll just close with some very quick next steps from us to you. We invite you to participate in our Innoverse events. They are scheduled for next week. You can find them all on the website, and they're really good sessions, and I think you'll enjoy chatting with other leaders from across the country around how they're implementing the playbook and things like that as well. And then also for any of you who are interested, you can also sign up for a 60-day trial of our Inno app. It's right on the website. You just click on Try Inno, and you'll see the entire onboarding process is completely automated. So we really encourage you to check that out as well. And of course, we're super appreciative of Anna and your partnership as well, and all of you for the work that you're doing. We know that this is a difficult time for all of you, but just know that you're not alone and that there are partners out there trying to help. So if there's anything we can do to be helpful, you don't have to buy anything from us. We would love to be a thought partner for any of you. And if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us. We're here. Thank you.
We appreciate everybody. Thanks.
Thank you as well. Take care.
All right. Have a great one.